Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack, back in to bring you our guide for Holy Priest for Season 1 Mythic Plus, giving you everything that you need to know to succeed in a dungeon environment. So, of course, if you're enjoying these guides, be sure to like and subscribe as it helps the channel out a ton. Getting into it, Holy Priest is one of the easier healers in the game to get into, with a very straightforward playstyle of focusing on single target healing in a dungeon environment. You're primarily based on making the most out of your Holy Word spells, with Serenity being single target focused, Sanctify being an AoE ground effect, and Chastise being a disorient, which can be talented into a stun, and empowering your other damage abilities are all huge parts of your kit. You're using the synergistic spells thanks to Serendipity, so you're able to bring your Holy Words back off cooldown by casting synergistic spells. In the case of Serenity, Flash Heal, Heal, and Prayer of Mending are reducing the cooldown. In the case of Sanctify, you have Prayer of Healing and Circle of Healing reducing the cooldown, and with Chastise, you have Holy Fire, Smite, and Holy Nova reducing the cooldown of that Holy Word. And so in a dungeon environment, you're primarily focused on your single target healing, with, of course, the very big talent in Lightweaver leading the way. When it comes to hero talents, Holy Priest has two options. First, my favorite and a bit more complex, is going to be Oracle. You get 3 different abilities. You have Insight for cooldown reduction, you have Piety for increased healing and overheal protection, then you have Solace, which gives a massive absorb of about half your health and a substantial damage reduction. With all 3 of these abilities, they cycle first with Insight, then into Piety, then into Solace, and then finally a 4th ability called Clairvoyance, which merges all 3 of the previous abilities into one. And so as a result, when you are using Solace and it's then on cooldown, your next ability is going to be Clairvoyance, and so your first single target casted ability is going to apply that Solace defensive shield to an ally. And so you have all of these abilities to really leverage at once. In a dungeon environment, you primarily want to use your Insight either for Prayer of Mending to give you more passive healing and also to further empower your Answered Prayers talent to give you Apotheosis uptime, or you want to use it on Holy Fire to get out a lot more damage. Piety's Overheal Redirect is incredibly powerful, not only as a flat healing increase, but also you can use it and leverage another talent called Prophet's Will, which increases your flash heal, and your serenity healing that you do to yourself, and redirecting overhealing to all of your allies. This makes for a very potent AoE heal, which is something that Holy Priest does not really have much of in a dungeon environment, since the only one they have really is Sanctify, to be able to blast some healing on the party if they're stacked. This makes for a very potent cooldown to utilize when everyone's taking equal amounts of damage, but if you had Piety up and only one person's taking a huge hit, you definitely want to focus them instead of worrying about the overheal transfers. Archon Holy Priest does pretty well in Mythic Plus. Keep in mind that your Halo is not going to pull any enemies that are not in combat with it, but if you have an enemy that is crowd controlled, for example, the Halo then could break the mob out of that crowd control as long as you're in combat with them. The Halo does a very good job of being like a mid-level cooldown that can help you very frequently, not only for the healing that it does on its own, but also for the talent in Resonant Energy, which is increasing the healing that all of your allies are going to be receiving. The bonus fear that you get out of Incessant Screams, giving you the after image effect, is a nice little bit of crowd control you can have on hand, and the Halo itself does quite a large amount of damage. It's a lot easier to be able to operate than Oracle, and it's just very straightforward to use, and you'd often end up utilizing this in between your Apotheosis cooldown to sort of bridge the gap for when you don't have as much output on hand. My recommendation overall would be to run Oracle at like the hardest or more challenging levels of content, but if it's not really speaking to you, Archon is totally fine. With 2 different hero talents, there's a couple different changes for your overall talent tree. As I mentioned with the Oracle tree in my ideal setup, you are getting a large amount of Prayer of Mendings out at all times, which not only is doing a great amount of healing, but it also really heavily stacks up the talent Answered Prayers, which, when it hits 50 heals out of your Prayer of Mending, is activating Apotheosis for you. Apotheosis is one of our major cooldowns, accelerating the rate at which we generate new holy words, and this is absolutely clutch for allowing us to get more holy words out to deal with the heavy amounts of damage that the War Within dungeons are throwing at us. So you have this great feedback loop of placing all these prayer of mendings onto your allies when you activate Insight. They're bouncing all over the place, proccing Apotheosis for you so you can get more holy words out, usually with Serenity, to top off your allies and keep them safe. You're still running Lightweaver, which is giving you a buff whenever you cast your flash heal that is then empowering your next heal cast. So you can store 2 charges at a time, and every time you cast a heal, it'll consume 1 charge at a time. This allows for very consistent high output, very steady output, and is incredibly good for when you have large amounts of single target damage going out into dungeons. Oracle not only is giving you that Apotheosis uptime, but it's also giving you the Piety effect, so when there is bursty amounts of damage going out onto the group, you're able to take advantage of the Piety Seedling effect, even casting Guardian Spirit into yourself, activating Piety, slamming Serenities, flash heals into yourself to evenly AoE heal yourself and your allies. The Archon Mythic Plus talent build is fairly similar to the Oracle one, but you are dropping answered prayers in favor of a full Voice of Harmony and 1 point into Light of the Naru. Since you're not getting as many Prayer of Mendings out, it doesn't make as much sense to lean very heavily into answered prayers for that extra uptime, and so instead you're focusing a bit more on that Holy Word generation and leaning on those free Surge of Light procs that Archon is giving you to be a bit more effective when it comes to spot healing out of those instant flash heals that Archon provides. The bonus stamina that the hero talent provides is also just personal, as is the personal power infusion buff that you can have on hand, and you basically are using your Archon Halo to assist you in your AoE healing to start evening out some of the health bars, and you're using your single target healing with Lightweaver, flash heals, Serenities to make sure you're catching anybody that drops a little bit too low. When it comes to your stat priority, of course, you're focusing on eye level above all else for maximizing your intellect, following it up with haste, versatility, crit, and then mastery. With Holy Priest being fairly squishy when it comes to a dungeon environment, that versatility helps quite a lot in your own survivability, and since you're very focused on single target healing all of the time, you need to have rapid delivery out of those flash heals, and Serenities, so reducing the cast time of those abilities can go very far in stabilizing your team. Your tier set bonus is incredibly helpful in a dungeon environment, with your 2-piece increasing the effectiveness of your Serendipity. That's again all of our synergistic spells reducing the cooldown of your holy word, so flash heal reducing the cooldown of Serenity. Those things are now 10% more effective. And your 4-set bonus is making it so that your flash heal, and prayer of mending have a chance to cast an additional time at 35% effectiveness, which also impacts the cooldown reduction we get for our holy words. So when playing with an Oracle setup, having those extra hits when you're in Apotheosis windows provides a very large amount of cooldown reduction to your holy words, giving you more of those instant cast heals to push up health bars very quickly. When it comes to your gameplay, you want to make sure as an Oracle Holy Priest that you're keeping your Prayer of Mendings utilized on Insight, or again, if you know that there's not that much damage going on, you can spend them on Holy Fires, and you want to make sure that you're stacking them up to 14 stacks, and so if a target has 8, 9 plus stacks on them, you want to choose a different target for casting your Prayer of Mending, allowing them to bounce and cycle onto the party for big healing. Piety, as we mentioned previously, you can use to Guardian Spirit yourself and cast flash heals, and Serenities into yourself when everyone's taking equal amounts of damage and everyone's around equal amounts of health. But if somebody is low, you want to make sure you focus target them every single time. When you are using Solace, any of your single target spells, flash heal, Serenity, Prayer of Mending, will all apply that Solace shield to the ally that you cast that ability on. So keep in mind, with a very low cooldown, you can freely send this onto the tank, onto yourself, on anyone in need. You don't want to hold onto it too long. Keep in mind, with Oracle, you also have a talent called Assured Safety, where your Prayer of Mending casts are also applying shield to the target for full effectiveness. When you play Oracle, you're not actually casting any shields yourself. It's just the Prayer of Mendings applying those shields. When playing an Archon build, you want to make sure you're casting Halo as damage begins, so it's not only healing, but also feeding you those surge procs for the instant cast flash heals. Your general rotation, your general priority is keeping your Prayer of Mending on cooldown, first using those holy words in both Serenity and in Sanctify whenever big damage is going out. Sanctify, I try to make sure I have at least 3 or 4 allies in the field before I'm dropping it onto them, keeping in mind that it's not going to be pushing up health pools super fast alone. It's great when you need to do equal amounts of healing, but in those sort of crisis situations where you need to push up someone's health pool fast, Serenities, and of course leaning on your Lightweaver output is incredibly important. When playing with Lightweaver, you're going to be building up your stacks for your heal buffs with Flash Heal, and then spending them whenever possible on heal. You basically only really want to be using heal when it's buffed by Lightweaver, and often I'm trying to make sure I'm always holding on to 2 stacks, spending one, and then sort of building up another one, because in a crisis situation, you don't want to have to worry too much about like running out of stacks. You just want to be able to smash down those heal casts, followed by Serenity whenever you get them back. Keep in mind, we're running the Resonant Words talent, and that means that whenever you cast a holy word, whether it's Serenity, Sanctify, or Chastise, you have a 40% buff on your next flash heal or heal cast. And so when possible, I'm trying to cast a holy word, follow it up with a heal. Cast a holy word, follow it up with a heal for maximum output. When it comes to dealing damage as a Holy Priest, they are one of the best, having huge amounts of damage thanks to the talent in Burning Vehemence, causing your Holy Fire to cleave onto enemies. So your general priority when you want to deal lots of damage is keeping your Holy Fire on cooldown and then making sure you're using your Chastise. Chastise has the Imperial Blaze talent, which is allowing you to cast 2 more Holy Fires after you cast a Chastise, and the Voice of Harmony talent is causing Holy Fire to reduce the cooldown of Chastise. So when you have Chastise on cooldown, you get 2 follow-up Holy Fire casts, which give you Chastise back. So you want to keep that Holy Fire on cooldown to give you more Chastises. Then your focus is going to be using Divine Star for damage, Holy Nova, whether you're at max stacks of Rhapsody for extra damage, or if you have 5 or more targets that are going to be taking damage, you want to be spamming Holy Nova to maximize that. And then if there's around 4 or less targets out and my Holy Fire, my Chastise, my Divine Star are all on cooldown and I don't have max stacks of Holy Nova, then I will multi-dot with Shadow Word Pain. Shadow Word Pain is a bit of a lower priority onto this because your Holy Fires deal so much damage. Now let's talk about using your cooldowns that are not hero talent based. Apotheosis is your primary output cooldown when you're playing in a dungeon environment, and when you activate it, it's instantly resetting the cooldown of your Serenity, your Sanctify, and your Chastise. Since you're holding 2 charges of Serenity and Sanctify at a time, it resets the cooldown of 1 charge. So you want to make sure that you are not overcapping on holy words when you activate this ability. Usually I try to make sure I have no holy words at my disposal, and then I activate it, not only for the holy word reset, but also when you are able to spend those holy words, you're able to then accelerate the generation of new ones. So you have a good synergy between getting more holy words back, spending the new holy words very quickly, and then taking advantage of your resonant words, which is buffing your flash heal or heal. And while casting the flash heal or heal, you're using the Apotheosis for more cooldown reduction for your Serenity, giving you more Serenities to utilize. The biggest thing I look for whenever I'm using Apotheosis is whenever I've expended all of my holy words, and if I'm using it for a healing environment, I will pop Apotheosis and probably send a Serenity into an ally in need, followed up with a heal or a flash heal, depending on if I have Lightweaver stacks, and work to continue building and spending more Serenities whenever possible. You will get that Sanctify cooldown back as well, but again, Sanctify kind of plays a supporting role in a dungeon environment for doing big healing. It doesn't kind of carry huge output onto its own. Usually Serenity is kind of holding that in mind. Now, if there's no damage happening, you can always pop Apotheosis for some big damage for yourself. Popping Apotheosis, hitting Chastise, following it up with Holy Fires is also going to reduce Chastise by a larger amount when Apotheosis is up, allowing you to fire off a massive amount of extra Chastise hits, which gives you more Holy Fire casts, which can do some massive amount of overall damage and help you wipe out trash packs much more quickly. As I mentioned in the Oracle section, you can of course use Guardian Spirit onto yourself to increase the overheal on yourself, which then gets transferred to everybody else when you have Piety on you. But if you're not needing that extra overheal or you're more focused on your tank, be sure to send Guardian Spirit very frequently onto your tank whenever they're in between major cooldowns. I'm always looking at For example, the 2 or 3 minute major cooldowns that tanks have at their disposal, waiting for them to expend it before I'm just firing off with the Guardian Spirit. It's a very good preemptive tool to maximize since all tanks are doing quite a lot of healing, and your single target focused playstyle does a lot of healing to the tank already. And so don't be afraid to actually send Guardian Spirit on a tank that's 100% life, but it looks like they're lacking some defensives or they have multiple defensives on cooldown, and there might be a challenging pack. With a 1 minute cooldown, thanks to Guardian Angel, there's a very high likelihood that even if it's a waste, you're gonna get your Guardian Spirit back off cooldown before the next bout of danger is coming around the corner. When it comes to your personal defensives, you have a few. With Protective Light, the talent that you have on your class tree, you basically have permanent damage reduction all the time thanks to Binding Heals synergy with Protective Light. So basically, casting flash heals, casting heals gives you permanent 10% damage reduction. Another 10% damage reduction you are getting from Fade. Fade is naturally giving you that 10% DR, making it easier to also skip around trash packs. Desperate Prayer, when talented into the bonus stamina increase, is about 40% additional stamina. And so often you want to make sure you're using this ahead of incoming damage and be pretty aggressive with it, because our final cooldown in Symbol of Hope is knocking off 30 seconds of that defensive and regenning mana for you, and knocking 30 seconds off of all of your allies' defensives as well. The biggest thing I look for is what the tank's major defensive is. With like a Blood DK, for example, it's going to be Icebound Fortitude, and so I'll look for the Icebound Fortitude icon, or Prot Warrior, it's going to be Shield Wall, and so I'll watch for those major defensives to be on cooldown, and make sure my own is on cooldown before I hit Symbol, and try to make very frequent use out of it. In this season for Mythic Plus, I think Holy Priest is pretty underrated, especially with the additional tank healing required throughout many of the dungeons, the huge amount of single target healing that's required on a few dungeons, especially in those like Dawnbreaker, with the lieutenants doing incredible amounts of damage. I think Holy Priest has incredibly good sustained healing to be keeping your allies healthy. Some of the worst dungeons that you're going to end up facing are going to be those like Arakara, which are intensely focused on both poisons and really bursty AoE. That's a big reason why Oracle is so powerful, is that they help a lot in dealing with the bursty AoE, it having a lot more passive Prayer of Mendings bouncing at all times, more holy words that you're getting thanks to answered prayers, better self-defensive out of the Premonition of Solace, better AoE healing out of Premonition of Piety to redirect the overhealing when you need to. It helps a massive amount in some of the areas that we are weakest at. I'd always recommend, if possible, to run with other classes that bring poison dispels into the group. Monks, druids, paladins, they all help a ton. Even evokers as well are going to help in reducing a lot of the damage that your group is going to be taking from those poison affixes on hand. I think the spec is going to do incredible amounts of damage, be very good on sustained damage and even rot damage effects, always having some kind of healing for any situation that you have, but it's always important to know your weak spots, and if you can, to tailor your group composition to help you kind of assist with those as well. Hope you all found this helpful, and if you'd like to support the content further and get early access to new videos, be sure to check out our Patreon below, and huge thank you to our patrons who make all of this possible. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll catch you all next time.